Okay, here are the tools of the trade. First thing you got to consider when you're threading a barrel is what is the OD of the barrel. You want to make sure that your tap, or your die in this case, a die cuts outside threads, will fit over it. Now the OD of the PAK9 barrel is just a little bit too big for this die to actually go on. You can't force it, it won't work, trust me. So I had to get an annular cutter. That's about an $80 tool. This is the most expensive part of this. And when I have this, I'll be able to do other barrels as well, because this thing is going to last a really long time, and it's only going to shave off a few thousandths. So it's not like it's going to be a big stressor to get that barrel honed down to the right diameter. And then once I do that, I'm going to use this guide right here, and that will allow the threads to go on straight. You got to have this. This is essential. Now you're probably looking at this thinking, there's a problem. The stem diameter here is kind of small. In fact, it's too loose. What's the deal? Well, there is a reason why I did that. Both of the guide stems in both of these tools, and you have a choice when you order these parts. You can get them for a .22 caliber barrel if you want to. So why would I do that? Why would I get a .22 caliber barrel stem in those two tools when I'm using a 9mm pistol and I want to work on that barrel? Well, I have a problem personally and morally with taking something that's going to be spinning around a piece of steel and sticking it inside my barrel. I think that's really bad for the rifling. And I'm not alone on this. There's a lot of people who wouldn't do that. They think it's a big compromise to have to do that. And so that's what keeps them from doing this procedure. Well, I've got a bit of a fix for that, actually. I found out that if you get one of these stems this diameter and you slip some neoprene plastic tubing over the top, it's a tight fit, but it'll go on. And that the inside diameter of that tubing fits this stem just perfect. And the outside diameter, if you push really hard, will go inside of the barrel. So what I've created here, if it works the way I'm hoping, is I've created a plastic surface that will act as a bushing between my barrel rifling and this spinning part. So I don't have to worry about damage to the rifling in my barrel with that plastic piece of tubing inside taking up the space between this and the rifling. So if all goes well, this should work really, really well. The tubing is very precise. It's not like it's crudely made. It's extruded and finely made so that it'll actually keep this thing right in the center of the bore, and it'll protect my rifling. And when this is all put together the way I'm thinking, it's a very snug fit. It's not going to wobble or do anything that would cause this to get crooked. Okay, here is a close-up of that plastic tubing. And there is some writing on here. Let's see if you can see that. I'm guessing the 10/03/16 is the date of manufacture. But this stuff right here is perfect. You can get this at Home Depot. Your local hardware store should have it. It's not hard to find at all. It's a plumbing supply. And now when you put this in here, it is a little bit loose, but it won't be for long. If you cut off about, I don't know, 1.5 inches or so, and you put this in there, and then you push this thing into the barrel, you want to go quite a ways in. It's a very tight fit, and this thing will squeeze down enough so that there will not be any wobble anymore after you do that. This will be a tight fit when you do that. Okay guys, here we are in the shop. I have the plastic tubing inside of the barrel. Don't ask me how I got that in there. It's a bit of work, but I used lubricant and I basically pushed it in using the floor, and I just pressed the gun against the floor to do that. And that way I was able to make it go in straight and make sure that it didn't slip or anything like that. So I've got my annular cutter here, and this isn't going to be that hard. I just need to take a few thousandths off of the outside of this barrel so that I can put the threads on. Very, very minimal amount to remove. Okay, you can already see I'm in about a 1/16 of an inch. That was very easy. It's going really nice. I'm going to get some oil and I'll keep this thing oiled. But one thing you want to be sure of when you put this in here, I've got a glove, a leather glove, padding this vise because, you know, I mean, I'm not going to put vise jaw marks on my gun. And it's not in there that tight, really. But I am pressing down on the front trunnion. That's a really solid block of metal right there where those two rivets are. And it's in here really, really well. I didn't have to really cinch it down, but that's all it takes. It's really easy to hold this thing tight. So I'm going to go get some oil, and we're going to keep on going here. You don't have to be neat with oil, just get it on there. I want to keep the speed fairly slow. Don't need to be in a hurry. And then reapply the oil every now and then. Just keep it oiled and take your time. This is going so easy, I almost feel guilty about it. But that's the way it should be. You should never have to force any of this stuff. It's really easy when you have the right tools and you get set up to do it correctly. So my jaw came loose on my chuck. Happens sometimes. We go again. This drill's pretty beat up. It's got a lot of hours on it. Well, that's looking pretty good. We're almost there. I don't know if you can see this, but I got about a 1/16 of an inch left to go until I shoulder up here. And you know, I think that's probably about all I need. I don't know if I want to go all the way back there to that sight post. I got plenty of space for threads here. It's probably at least a 1/2 inch cut away from the barrel, front to back. So I'm going to go ahead and get my tap wrench, and then we'll put some threads on this thing. Okay guys, I got my tap wrench on here, and I haven't even started cutting threads yet. But the spindle of this thread guide is in the barrel. You can tell it's in there pretty tight. Any wobble is literally just the wrench holding the die. The die is not moving at all. It's in there really nice and straight. The wrench just has a little bit of wobble, but that doesn't matter. Now when you cut these threads, I found that
Slow is always better. I take my time, and what I like to do, besides keeping it really well oiled, I will make less than one full rotation and then I'll back off. And I just keep advancing that way, very, very slowly. You want these threads to be not only advancing straight, but you don't want to be getting the chips and the metal that's being removed loaded up into the cutting surface of the tool. By backing off, you break those chips free, and the tool can cut new threads cleanly. And the oil also helps with that too. So keep it oiled, go slow, and back off, in my opinion, at least once for every revolution. So here we go.
So what's going on right now is the die is turning on the thread alignment guide. It hasn't even started cutting on the barrel yet. You see how nicely that rotates? I haven't even started cutting threads. That guide is really critical. You will not get these threads straight if you don't have one of those. All right, I'm just touching the barrel now. And away we go. I can feel a little resistance, and that is from the beginnings of this die cutting threads. Don't have to force it, nice and easy. One thing you want to think about is most of the muzzle devices that you can put on a gun barrel are aluminum. And as a result, you want to make sure you've got really clean threads. You want those threads to be straight. Otherwise, a dinged up, galled up thread will tear up your muzzle device very quickly because steel is much harder than aluminum. So keep it oiled and go slow. Can't stress that enough. It's kind of messy doing this, but sometimes good things are messy. Now, one thing you'll notice when you advance, there's a certain amount of resistance. And then when you go back, there's a little bit of resistance, and then it gets easier. That is what you feel when you're cleaning the chips out of your work area. So I just kind of rock it through, and then I go back until the resistance, and it should be really nice and free back here where the threads are already cut. Got a certain amount of resistance as you advance, a little bit as you go backwards until the chips are broken free, and then you move forward again. There's nothing to be afraid of when doing this. If you take your time, if you invest in good tools, and these tools, if you invest in a die, an annular cutter, and a thread guide, you can do a lot of barrels with these. And with Segas and other kinds of firearms, there's a lot of barrels to be cut. You will find yourself able to make those modifications easily with the right tools. So it's a good investment. It's not hard to do either. You'll find yourself paying that much or more having a gunsmith do it just one time. So it's worth giving it a try. All right, every now and then I just back off and see how I'm doing. I know that it feels like it's working really well. Make sure your die is in good and strong. I can see that I've got about, almost a 1/4 inch of threads on the end here. It's going really well. And I'm going to take this opportunity to oil the heck out of it again. Can't have too much oil in there. Look how nice and easy that dye threads onto those threads. At some point, you'll need to advance the dye because once your thread guide hits the end of the barrel, it may stop. It may create quite a bit of extra resistance. So you can turn the thread guide back here and give yourself a little more space to cut new threads. And about the time that you're off the end of this, you've got enough thread on the barrel to just go ahead and thread it right on the barrel and keep going. All right, at this point, I can see that I'm not on my threading guide at all. I'm just on the threads on the barrel. And we're really rocking now. Okay, see? The thread guide is out, and I'm strictly on the barrel. Just cutting threads on the barrel. Probably time for a little more oil. And we are almost there. I can see I've got about 1/8 of an inch or less to go. Let's take this off and have a look. Oh, those are nice looking threads. That'll work out real well. See, now that didn't take very long at all. That'll work real nice. Nice and clean, just like a factory thread. That's all there is to it. Now the only thing you got to worry about is getting this piece of plastic hose out of the barrel. And one of the things you can use is a piece of brass rod and run it from behind and tap it out, which is what I'm going to do. Brass will not hurt your grooves and lands, and it'll get that thing out real nice. And I'll show you that next. Well, I have this brass rod that I use sometimes for tapping out squibs or stuck cases, but it's a 1/4 inch and it just went right down the center of the tubing, so it didn't work. So what I did was instead I ran a 1/4 inch tap
into the hose. Now, you don't have to worry about that hurting your barrel because that hose is pretty tough plastic. It keeps it right in the center. And then I took a pair of channel locks and I just pulled it out. Right like that. So that's what it looked like. That's the piece of hose that I used. And worked like a charm. Protected the end of my barrel. Here's the extra bit of hose that got shaved out of the inside of this hose when I tried to tap that brass rod through there. It's nice to have some of this stuff. You can usually get it at your hardware store, and it's brass. It's softer than your barrel, so it's safe to use to tap out stuck cases or squibs. Now, I got a nice thread. I didn't do anything to the crown. It's perfectly fine. But that's a nice job right there. That's going to work real well. And that is how you thread the barrel of the PAK9. Now, you don't have to take everything apart like I did. I just like to do that. It only took me about a minute and a half to take off my folder mechanism with the buttstock, take the bolt and the buffer and the spring and all of that stuff out of here so that this thing, and the front handguard too, it's a lot easier to clamp this in the vise when you take off that front handguard. And then of course it'll only take me a minute or two to put that all back together again. And we're on our way. All right, so our threading is done and it is the moment of truth. So this is what the condition of the gun was. I stripped everything off of it that I could, everything that comes off real easily. I was able to strip all of this stuff off in probably less than 2 minutes. I don't know why, it just makes it a little easier to handle. So, here we go. It's always interesting the very first time you check your work to see how well this thing threads on. Oh, that's going on real nice. Yeah, those are good threads. Real nice. Nice and snug. Oh yeah. It doesn't come up against a wall. It just sort of tightens the last, I don't know, half turn, which is great. You probably won't need a crush washer or anything like that. And I hope I don't ever need to use a wrench on this. It does have flats, but this is aluminum, and unless I have a plastic wrench, it'll probably mar that finish. But this winds up stopping right perfectly so that the flat is exactly dead center on the top and on the bottom. So it looks really good. Now, I don't know if this is the linear compensator that I'm going to use for this pistol. It may be a little too big, I just don't know. I don't want this pistol to get too big. You know, everything I've added on here has been pretty carefully thought out and for a reason. And if I don't like it, I'll just take it off and get a smaller one. But I'm going to take it to the range and try it out first and see how I like it. And so that's how you thread a barrel. And it turned out really good. I'm really happy with this. Went really well. That didn't take very long. Actual time of work was probably about 30 minutes, including tear down, setup, clean up, everything. So if you ever wanted to thread a barrel, that's how. Don't be afraid, do it right, get the right tools, and have fun. This is Max Headspace 9mm, and have a good one.